entrance. Every initiative at Vaxai Santuno, whether it's a poetry reading or a formal dinner for an auto finance campaign, is all part of this funding campaign where you can't separate the politics, culture, and the economics. So basically, this is a form of social fundraising. When you go to some of these spaces, whether it's a concert, you get a beer, or a poetry reading, you get some food, or if it's a dinner, you're having fun with your friends and socializing and taking part in both the cultural aspects of the organization, the social aspects of the organization, and also, of course, the political aspects. So the economics lie in the social relationships. Self-management means that anyone can come in and be part of the show. This is, in essence, prosumption. There is no distinction between the consumer and the producer of culture at a social center. Everything is auto-produced, so you can help with the lights, or clean, or work the bar. Usually there are turns for these things. Furthermore, the space is non-hierarchical, so the so-called founder, many times there's a founder or a couple of leaders in a space, might be cleaning the floor while other volunteers are setting up the stage or taking management decisions. Some places have specific groups, so specialization can occur, but everything is volunteer-based. This is an act of socialization or citizen building in which participants can gain skills and know-how that would otherwise be unavailable to them. And in many cases, this is an empowering experience. In the Italian case, where the high cost of living has led to many students living outside of the city, usually in their hometown, living with their parents, they are gaining, and the job market is very rigid, and so it's very hard to get a job that's not working a bar or being a waiter or waitress or working in a shop in general. So this is a fun thing. They can have their own space, and they can even learn things that would otherwise would be impossible to learn. The spaces are truly engaging in entrepreneurial activity. They incubate emerging artists. They gain access to new audiences. So hip-hop, as I mentioned earlier, was an important aspect of social centers in the 90s. In the 80s, it was punk. By targeting unused government spaces and emphasizing neighborhood politics, they can trigger mechanisms of urban renewal and social change. Moving along.
So from this point, we were wondering if it was even possible to have a European overview. And we think that yes, there is, because there are repeating issues and themes despite cultural and social differences, such as city revitalization, creative reuse of space, and the creation of new forms of art. So we decided to start with London, because the squats in London originated from the Centro Sociale idea in Italy. And this was much different from some of the other cities we visited. The squats here in London, or at least the ones that we saw, were much more political than cultural. And unfortunately, we happened to be in town during the 3 days of action March Against Austerity Cuts, so everyone that we spoke to thought we were undercover cops. Clearly, more research needs to be done in London moving forward in these next few months. And it's possible that we should shift toward the independent cultural center side of things in London instead of just the squats. So Paris, on the other hand, very different. There's a huge bohemian drive associated with Paris. Every artist dreams of moving there. Even people that aren't artists dream of moving to Paris and becoming artists. But the rents are extremely high, which then leads to decades of artist squats. So the study that we're going to talk about today is called 59 Rivoli, which is actually a legalized art squat. It's a 6-story building right in the center of Paris on Rue de Rivoli. It was previously owned by the Bank of Lyon and then abandoned, and then it was taken over by a group of young rebellious artists in 1999, and this was done illegally. So it was a funky, colorful, welcoming place where you could see great new art and talk to the artists and actually see the process. So tourists flocked to the space, and it eventually became the 3rd most visited contemporary art space in the city, which is kind of exciting. So the city of Paris, instead of shutting the place down, decided that in 2006 there would be a citywide effort to legitimize these popular but technically illegal art venues. So the space was bought, closed, and renovated by the Paris City Hall for 10 million euros. And then it was reopened in September 2009 as an after squat. So essentially, the city created a tailored agreement for these spaces, which allows selected squatters to stay in exchange for a minimal rent, which can be as low as €1 a day. And the space has to essentially promise that they will continually create art and continually have access for the public. So for 59 Rivoli, they have a completely open studio policy. They have temporary residencies. There are basically 15 core members and then 30 artists working in the building. And the artists are required to be door greeters for 1 hour a week, and each pays $160 for utilities. So similar to 59 Rivoli, similar spaces are being bought and renovated to comply with safety regulations throughout Paris right now. So there is a trend toward legitimization that hopefully will continue. And Christophe Girard, the city's deputy mayor for culture, he said this doesn't mean that every squat is wonderful, but some obviously become part of the city's heritage and must be preserved. So moving on to Berlin. Berlin has a much more recent history of artists flocking to the city. So since the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, there was a huge creation of derelict land full of factories and warehouses in the middle of the city that nobody really knew who owned them. And as well, there was an extremely low cost of living. So this was perfect environment for emerging artists. So the case that we're talking about today is called Radial System 5, New Space for the Arts in Berlin. And this was opened in September of 2006. It used to be an old water pumping station that you can kind of see in the picture. So we spoke with one of the directors, Johan Sandig, who's an artist as well as the most innovative cultural manager I think either of us have ever met. He was one of the founders of Tacheles Gallery in 1990, which is a huge and not so underground anymore artist squat in Mitte in Berlin. And he's married to the contemporary dancer Sascha Waltz. So for Sandig, innovation and sustainability are essentially guiding factors to the future of cultural centers. And although squatting Tacheles was a vital part of his journey, his life has changed over the years. He has a family now, so he needs a more sustainable organization to run. So he got creative. So this building, this pumping station, it was donated by a private real estate company, and then the refurbishment of the space was paid for in a twofold grant by the city of Berlin, and then the organization is responsible for running costs only. He said it was like someone donated a car, gave money for a new engine, and he just has to pay for the gas to keep it running. So open dialogue is key for this organization, whether it's between the old and new building, between the various art forms, and between culture and business. So I think one of the hardest things for a lot of cultural managers to realize is that you can have both artistic and commercial events, and that doesn't mean that you are selling out. And Sandig said, just like a person, in order to live, an organization needs to sleep. You can't just compare programs at events because you won't have the funds, the staff, or the audience, and you'll essentially run yourself into the ground. It's not sustainable. But unfortunately, it seems to be the norm for most of today's cultural sector. We have to do more, get money from the government, keep producing culture, stay awake, produce, and in order to stay awake, we need drugs. And one of my favorite quotes of Sandig's was that public funds are the cocaine of cultural organizations. So Radial System just buys their own gas, but how? So some of the main things that keep Radial System sustainable is the flexible structure of the venue itself. It allows them to have a variety of events and have very diverse programming and innovative artistic products, which their focus is a fusion of disciplines and new ways of performing these disciplines, such as classical music concerts where the audience lays on yoga mats. It's also a great place for conferences, fashion week, and things like that. They really encourage people to rent the space for events. And then the money they make from these commercial endeavors goes directly back into the organization. Additionally, they have a restaurant and catering piece, which is very important for both their community development to bring people in the neighborhood into the space, as well as their revenue stream, because they cater all events in-house. They also have a huge education and cultural component for children, which includes partnerships with school. They have childcare during afternoon events, and they're just very innovative in the way that they approach things. And it's extremely successful. In 2009, they had around 80,000 visitors, and this included events that were artistic and non-artistic. They had 70 non-artistic events and 275 artistic events. So, just a few, pulling back from everything for a minute, the trend so far seem to be that in London, the government is shutting the squats down. In Paris, the government is legalizing and refurbishing the existing artist squats. And in Berlin, there's both an attempt to shut down some spaces, like they're trying to do with Tacheles, as well as partner with individuals who have new visions for a model where everyone benefits. So as far as our research project goes, in the next few months, we plan on doing a lot more preliminary research, or primary research rather, to include surveys and interviews with a lot of these spaces, and try to do some universe mapping, as well as some collaborations with other networks such as the Trans-Europols and the Squeak network.
Although we are at the beginning, in many ways, of our research, there are some takeaways that we would like to explore further. On the policy side, the management and reuse of unused and abandoned spaces is a huge issue. Many organizations, companies, and governments really have no plan. And through the occupation of these spaces, the social centers and independent cultural centers highlight the disuse through the creative reuse, thereby triggering mechanisms of urban renewal. These organizations become part of loss leaders, which have, over the last 20 years, we've seen in this sector, generally form part of urban renewal as well as gentrification. These spaces typically have a very strong part of community building. They really become part of the urban fabric of a city or a community and increase the quality of life. Finally, through their reuse and recycling and using donated goods, these are really organizations that take part in green initiatives. From the artist side, these organizations are incubators for emerging artists. In fact, they can even produce new forms of art, such as hip-hop, or what 59 Rivoli is calling squat art. They are residency spaces that allow for artistic dialogue within the space, as well as between different artistic disciplines. So this is a great networking opportunity for artists as well as spaces. Finally, from a management point of view, these spaces show a great way of alternative fundraising that is really social. Everything is a dinner or an aperitivo or a poetry reading or a social event in which it's not really fundraising in the traditional sense in which you are asking for a gift, but just part of what you do within the venue. These spaces are all multi-purpose, so you can do yoga or have theater or dance or exhibitions. You can really do anything there. So how can maybe an opera or a museum also do yoga in their spaces? Because basically they have large areas of flat space in their buildings. How can you use your space for other non-cultural events, such as rentals? How can you reduce fixed costs? So many of these social centers and independent cultural centers get their building donated, or maybe they receive money for renovation, or they use recycled equipment. And so at the end of the day, they're just, as Laura said, paying for the gas to run the organization. And finally, these organizations really are part of grassroots initiatives. They build the demand within the arts. They use volunteers. They come from the community, and it's not top down. So, thank you everyone for listening. I'm Patrick Waldo.
And I'm Laura Odegaard.
If you have any questions, please email us.